All right. And we are live. Welcome, brother. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, good morning, Alain. How are you?
Good, man. Good. So what do you do? What do you do first thing in the morning when so like we are it's 6 a.m. here. I had told a few people that I'm like, hey, if you want to come join us, we're live at 6. They're like, 6? Like I can't talk before 7. And I know
I've
both
gotten
of us
that
we've been
reaction
up
too.
for a bit, for a minute. So what do you do? What do you do to make sure that you're like coherent at 6
Ready
a.m.?
to go. Well, yeah, you and I have jammed about this too, and you've done a lot of these programs, and we've both read a lot of personal growth books, and studied guys like Tony Robbins. Um, I've done a lot of different things over the years. Like with Tony, he's got his hour of power, he calls it, right? And so
Yeah.
there's been a time where I get up and do this whole Tony ritual that would take like an hour, and it was like breathing exercises and uh the rebounder. I mean, anyone who's gone to Tony knows what I'm talking about. The rebounder. It was just a whole thing, and it worked for a while. I just don't think it was for me sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I found something that works for me. That's easy, it's quick, it's simple, and I feel great. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep doing this, and it's been a culmination of stuff. Like I even put a bunch of famous people into Chat GPT, and I asked it to do some research about what was common amongst their morning routines. So, anyways, I put all of this together, all these years of experience, and so right now, to answer your question, it's I get up, I use the washroom, brush my teeth, start my coffee, and then the key things I do every day is I journal, and it's at least one sentence. I have an app that tracks all this too. And I find it's important for me to see the progression of things. Seinfeld was a big believer of don't break the chain. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll tick
Do you
off.
journal inside of your phone or inside of an app?
No, I write. The journaling I write, and then when I'm done it, I tick it off in the app.
Mm.
I just feel like it's important to have that physical, tactile journaling. So I
Yeah.
like writing at least one sentence. That's my goal. And then usually it turns out into half a page, sometimes a page. But I journal. I'll pray, and I'm not a religious guy, but I find praying it's kind of like a gratitude practice. And one of our friends is taking a praying course, and she said that the key is to also speak it out loud. And so
Mm.
I've just been intuitively, I just was doing that because I felt like it was helpful to say it, hear it, kind of speak it into, reality too, not just have it stuck in my head. So I'll pray again. It can be really short, and all it is just a stream of thank yous. I'm thankful to be here right now. I'm thankful for
Mm.
my health. I'm thankful for these amazing people in my life. I'm thankful for you. Thankful that here we are in this, all this technology works. There's someone listening potentially to what I'm saying right now. So it's just everything I'm thankful for in that moment on that day, and a lot of the same things. Um, I'll do my push-ups. This is a long, your when your kids have come in.
Yeah. Okay, go for it. So you do
I'll do
push-ups?
push-ups. Yeah, so there's a physical part to it as well. 40 push-ups every morning. And yeah, that's largely it. And all of these things will track. So it's evolved, but that doesn't take me any more than a few minutes. So I've got my coffee, I've done my journaling, I've done my praying, I've done my push-ups. And some of this I've been videoing too, as I know maybe you've seen every day. It's just to share, commitment and how powerful I think commitment is.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm ready to go. And then, here we are.
Very nice.
How about you?
Is-
What's your
Lately, it's also been a little bit simplified. I used to do very similar. There was a lot of stuff that was happening. But right now, the first thing I do is I get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, and then from there, I get actually undressed, took off all my clothes, and put on like a robe. And I walk out onto my deck and walk down into our backyard where I have a little canopied area beside the house where I have my cold plunge. And I go into the cold plunge for 3 minutes every morning. And then while I'm doing that, while I'm sitting in the cold plunge, I send a picture, where I take a picture of myself and I send it to a little group of 4 guys that we cold plunge every morning. So we send each other a picture that we've done it, just for accountability. And I've been doing that with those guys probably just over a year and a half, I guess. So that's been pretty awesome. And then I come back in the house, I fix a little cup of coffee, and then I'll go downstairs. And lately I've been doing the priming sequence that Tony teaches. So I actually there's a YouTube video of him doing his priming. So I actually just follow that. I just put that video on and I close my eyes and I do that. I think it's 15 minutes. And I do that. And then I've not been great at journaling, although I know that it's something that I love to do. And but although I've not been super consistent with that. And then lately I've actually just been getting right into some work. Like some just like kind of deep work, more writing and things like that. Just more creative work.
Very cool. Yeah, the thing, well, that's amazing. Cold plunging through the Canadian winter too, huh?
Well, especially in the Canadian winter.
I
remember it was on my deck, and it was minus 15 here a couple days, and I'd have to at nighttime before I would go to bed, I'd have to go out with like a pot full of boiling water and pour boiling water just so that it wouldn't get 3 or 4 inches of ice before the next morning. But the next morning I'd have to like crack all the ice off. I'd be getting in. I remember having a couple mornings have like cuts on my arm from the shards of ice. It was brutal, but amazing. Something I never want to do. Every morning I try to convince myself not to do it. And every morning when I do it, I'm so glad I did it. And I feel like that one little thing has just been a catalyst for me to just overcome a lot. It's like there's something I really don't want to do, but as soon as I do it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And oh my gosh, how much better do I feel because of it? So it's been a total game changer for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest things, right? Is that mental willpower training, toughness, or like just training your mind to do something that it's telling you not to. Do you know what I mean? Like to again, we've both done a lot of Tony work. Like he does it every day too, right? He's got a special cold therapy thing he uses, right?
Well, he's got like a little plunge. It's like it's probably 3 feet by 3 feet, and it's probably, I don't know. How tall is he? He's 6'7", something like that. So it's probably 7 feet deep. It's like an abyss of a hole. Yeah. He just jumps in. I think the water is like 45 degrees or 50 degrees, or something like that. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many. I know. I did the Wim Hof program, and we did cold plunging I did it for like 2 years. Cold showers. Going out. It's amazing what you can train your mind to do. You know what I mean? Like through that program, at the peak of it, it was somewhere around New Year's Day, and it wasn't just a polar bear swim. We would be able to go out in one of the rivers that was, snow runoff, and there was snow on the ground, and it was basically freezing, the water itself, and we would be able to go in for, I don't know, 15 minutes, but being able to control your body and there's a lot of breathing to get your body warmed up and sort of your natural furnace going, and then being able to stay in there for that long. There's a lot of stuff that has to go on in your head to be able to manage what's going on.
Yeah there's so much of life these days seems so, we take it for granted. We sometimes think we have hard days, but it's so easy. Like we have things so easy these days that I think we get used to this idea that life is just super easy and there's no challenge, and that's so disconnected from our physiology. I mean, there's a thing called Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law says that there must be demand on bones to be able to grow bones. So if you want like big, thick, strong bones that as you age, that you aren't going to just bend over and break your leg or break your hip, you need to put demands onto that bone. that is, I mean, that is a law of life. And so the same goes with our body, the same goes with our mind. But we've been so accustomed to everything is you can just get food by going on your phone and ordering it, and they'll like deliver it to your house. If you're sitting on your deck, they'll deliver it right to you. You don't even have to move. And this is what life has become. And for you don't necessarily have the hard that just goes along with just being able or having to survive. Like we don't have to hunt for our food. We don't have to do a lot of these things. So a lot of the things that we do that are hard are just self-imposed at this point. Like we put ourselves into those situations where we have to overcome. That just builds that muscle within our mind, and it really builds it within our physiology as well.
Right. Right. You're right. That's huge. Like, just how comfortable you're right. We are like, I'm in my house, like the heat. I don't even have to, like, obviously back in the day, we would have to go and make heat. I'd have to go and get wood and chop it up somehow with a tool that I would have had to make and make fire from scratch and keep the fire going to keep us warm. Now I don't even do anything, right? The gas comes into my house. The thermostat is AI, controlled. It's adjusting to
Mm-hmm.
the temperature of the house automatically based on weather and everything else, right? The nest, like, so I don't have to do anything to create this comfortable environment that I live in that feels, whatever it is, 20 degrees all the time. And so I totally get you, right? And then we can go outside and our car can be automatically already set to a certain temperature when we get in it. And you can have Bluetooth warm socks on the ski hill and all of these fancy jackets. I mean, you never have to experience cold if you didn't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. I find in the context of being a dad, that is something that I find, not that I struggle with, but is definitely is something of top of my mind a lot, is how do I allow my children to build resilience, to build strength, to build that kind of that grit within them, and at the same time give them much more than I had. And I had a lot when I was a kid. I grew up I love my childhood, and yet I think there's an instinct for us to just want to give our kids everything and not want them to feel pain or to suffer or to have hardship or to feel any of those negative, what we feel as negative things. And yet it's one of those things that I see with my kids' friends, like the ones that are given the most, the ones that are, the things are done for them the most, tend to be the ones that have the poorest attitudes, tends to be the ones that are the least kind, that tend to be the ones that, like, okay, this is where this is headed. This is not heading in a good direction for you. Like you were going to be a child your entire life if nothing
Right.
changes. And a kid's 5 years old, and it's like, oof. So I really struggle. Not like I said, I don't. Well, sometimes I struggle with it for sure. Like, am I doing the right thing for my kid? Am I? How do I in the moment when they are quitting at something, or when they're just having a hard time? When's the right time to step in? When's the right time to make them continue? When's the right time? It's a dance, but
Yeah, I totally hear you. You know, I yeah, I just think of so many stories. Even with my eldest now being 15, she's not going to want to share. I mean, to share maybe someone she was younger. And but like, I just immediately go to sports activities. Do you know what I mean?
mhm,
Like, once you find something they love, I think like it's like homeschooling. I remember that being the big thing about homeschooling is find a topic that they love and then teach them all the subjects through that, right? It's not like math and science as separate things. It's like, no, they love whatever it is, the Roman Empire, some subject or history or whatever, or horses. It doesn't matter. But if you can find that they all have it, I totally believe kids, if given the opportunity, will grab onto something and show you what they love if you're present to it as well and really paying attention to your kids. I believe it's there. And once you have that and they have that, then there's this huge opportunity to teach them all these lessons through that. And I find
mhm,
the same thing with activities. And at least in my family, largely it's been sports activities. And once they've found something, there's so many opportunities then for them to learn life lessons through that passion of theirs. If I think of my youngest with soccer, she really likes soccer, but even more so, she loves playing it with her friends. Like she's got most of her class, we got, excited, and they're all on the same team. So she's super looking forward to soccer. And even in the most crazy weather, because they play through the winter here, which is also weird. They take a break in the summer and when it's the nicest weather here, but the kids play right through winter. They take a break for Christmas, but they play right through the worst like weather here. And I've found that to be an amazing one amazing opportunity to teach them and for them to experience grit. Is here's something to look forward to. Their friends are there, not a lot of them, and then also just that mindset, just in this example of there's no bad weather, it's just bad gear. And so, gearing them up properly. And my daughter's out there. There's only 2 other girls on a team of 13. And so this happened on 2 different weekends. It's just dumping rain. It's windy. It's like +6, maybe 5. Super cold. And they're out there. They're bundled up, toque and rain jacket and gloves and boots and all that. But they're out there and they're having fun. And they get the grit award. I think there's opportunities like that when there's something they love to teach them these lessons of like, I can do that. Even it doesn't matter how quote unquote bad the weather is. I can get out there and I can still have fun.
Right. And I think there's so much of that so often when I teach stuff like that to my kids, when there's like, a moment of like, hey, this is a life lesson moment, that I walk away going, yeah, I need to listen to that more too. I should really listen to my own advice here. But it's so easy to see it when it's just with someone else or to someone else. But and like very similar to what we were jamming about off air before we started, this idea that when our kids go through something hard, or when they think like, when they tell themselves something negative, like we don't believe it, and we're always encouraging them. And regardless of how many times, like my kid didn't try to walk for 2 weeks and then we go, oh, you know what? You didn't do it. You're just not a walker, I guess.
Right.
Like that would never happen. And I don't care if my kid was given heaven forbid, they were given some sort of terminal diagnosis of some sort. I would never, ever give up on them. And I would never teach them to give up on themselves. Yet, how many times do I give up on myself? How many times do I tell myself, yeah, you know what, I'm probably just not cut out for this? And it's never something that I would do for a child. And I would imagine my parents, when I was a kid, telling that to me. Like I was that kid that someone saw limitless potential, that someone saw unconditional love, that someone saw so much joy just for being alive. There was a value in me to someone else just because I was there. I didn't have to earn it. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to exist. And at some points, our kids, in large part, are in a way, they're just a bunch of parasites. They're leeching off of us. We do everything for them. Yet, we love them. Like there's a love that we feel for our kids that, people who don't have kids, it's hard to explain. Like I remember before I had a kid, someone saying to me, like, he's like, I can't even explain to this. And he's like, I'll talk to you about this after you have a kid. But there's this feeling that you're going to get that I can't even describe. Like you don't even know, like you think you can love now, but once you have a kid, it's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing. And I remember thinking, yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that. But I didn't. And I didn't until I had a kid. Then I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Like there's this thing. And just as someone thought that about, or that we think that about our own kids, that someone thought that about us. And how often I forget my own inherent value to life just because I'm here and that I am an asset to this world. And just because I exist, and you're the same, and we're all the same. We all have this inherent value, this inherent love within us, just because we're here.
I totally know what you're saying. And there's a lot of things that come up for me here to reflect back. I mean, not well, that's amazing. So your parents were like that with you. They had this belief that they gave you and shared with you that, that unconditionally they loved you, that you were, you were sharing there, that they gave you this belief, right, from them, that just because you were you were loved, you were amazing. Is that how your
Well,
parents were with you, as you were saying?
I think so. Yeah, I think it wasn't something that was necessarily conscious.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think my parents were great teachers. And I know that that's not always the case, that people don't always have that sort of parenting. But I think about just from the base level, even if someone was not a great parent, I mean, many times, even like Tony Robbins talks about this a lot too, that, I mean, his mom, who was an alcoholic and who was abusive, that she was she was doing the best that she could. And he knew that there was a positive intent in all of that, that he was still loved, that she just didn't have the capacity. She didn't have the knowledge. She just was wrapped up in her own stuff. And yet that's not a reflection on him. And so regardless of how we're brought up, I mean, just trying to keep a baby alive, like a baby just doesn't stay alive by itself. So you could have the most dysfunctional parent, and yet if you're being kept alive, I mean, that's an act of love right there.
Yeah.
And at that point, if you're a dysfunctional parent trying to raise a kid or trying to keep a kid alive, a baby alive, a newborn, an infant, I mean, that's big. That's a big act of love. Huge. And you didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. Like, I mean, you deserved it in that because you're alive, you deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you didn't do anything you didn't tick a box to say, okay, you did this. It wasn't this sort of like this horse trading idea, or as Tony calls it, whoring. That you do something to get something.
Yeah,
you didn't do anything.
You're just sitting there. Yeah.
You're just baby.
If anything, you're not doing anything. You're doing stuff that takes a lot of work, right? You're crying. You're needing to be fed. You're needing to be changed every couple hours. You're up on. I mean, there's so many things that you're in theory taking a lot at that phase.
Yeah.
And yet it stirs up in people. And again, we were talking about this before the call. It stirs up in us this incredible feeling that we all innately have, I think, and you were sharing this too, right? Is that as a species, that in terms of how we've gotten here, there's this, and I was sharing with you this book I read recently, Love Sense. There's the science of this, that there is this feeling within us that's allowed us to evolve and be here, that when we see our own child, there's just this undescribable, we call it love, this undescribable feeling that's just like, oh my God, even though this little thing is really not able to do much other than just take from me right now, look at what it's giving me. Look at this feeling that I have within me, that I would do anything for this little one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so incredible. Yeah, what a gift.
And I don't think, well, and that's a great empowering perspective, is that sometimes, our parents don't give us that love or that admiration or that belief, as you were describing. They don't always give it in the way we think we need it, or maybe we do actually need it, or want it. It's given, right? Just the fact that we're still alive, that it was given in some form, that they raised this child. And I know I've done a lot of work to realize that my parents were amazing, and there were some things they didn't do that I thought I needed, and maybe I did. And so I've done my work to realize that, look, even though they didn't know how to give me that, love in a certain way, that's okay, right? That they did their absolute best. And now I can be like, that would have been a good for me. I don't hold it against them because they did their absolute best. Now, what do? I realize I can give it to them, and that feels amazing. And I can give it to my kids going forward too.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it's really interesting as we grow up that, like, at first we tend to put our parents up on a pedestal,
Yeah.
like, wow, like they're these superheroes. And then some of us go through a period where we just really vilify them,
Mm.
where they're like, I can't believe you did this to me. You messed me up and I hate you. And da, da, da. You know, we got through those teen angst phases. And sometimes that for some people that lasts into adulthood and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to the point where we begin to humanize them,
Right.
where I can start to see, especially now that I have a kid, like, wow, what that would have been. I mean, I have 2 kids. My parents had 4.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, my mom gave birth to 4 kids between the age of 20 and 25.
Okay.
It's amazing. I think about me at 25 having 4 kids. Forget about it. Forget about it. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
And
like the life,
you know, and like what they went through, and think all the feelings that I have about myself and the inadequacies and the guilt and shame that I sometimes have, and all those things that, even though I have that, I'm still doing my best for my family. I'm still doing my best for myself. I'm still doing my best for my kids. And that's the same thing that our parents did too. And yeah, sometimes we don't have the parents that we want, but ultimately we got the parent that we needed. And if it wasn't for what we got, we wouldn't be the person we are today. If it wasn't for the fact that Tony Robbins had a dad or a mom that was, you know, abusive, and a dad that was angry, and that, you know, they showed him all of these things about life and created the need for him to get out of that and create something different, he may not be Tony Robbins today. If Oprah wouldn't have had the childhood that she had, would she be the Oprah that she is today? I mean, we don't know, but not likely. I mean, the moments of our life shape our destiny. The decisions that we get to make moment to moment shape who we are. And it's not what happens to us, but who we become through that process. And I love that more so recently, this idea of Stoic philosophy is becoming much more popular. I know that even you were talking about Jerry Seinfeld earlier. Like, Jerry Seinfeld is a big proponent of it, a big fan of it, and has been talking about it a lot on his press junkets that he's been on. And Ryan Holiday, who's a super popular author and speaker now, he just came out with a new book about what I guess the third of 4 of the 4 Stoic virtues. And just the core concept of Stoicism is that life, like, we are not in control of life. What we are in control of is our own reaction, or how we respond to life. And I love that that's becoming more known. I love that people are writing about it, about speaking about it, because I get to learn about it way more. And like we're talking about, this idea that life is pretty easy, and we think that because it's so easy, that anything negative is like it's all happening to us, and we are a victim of all these things. And we live in a world or in a culture where that's been politicized, and people, like, there's just this victim mentality that people walk around like as with victimization as an identity. It's not something that happens, and never mind, it's not even something that's happening to me. It's who I am now. And so people, when we identify with that, I mean, that's it doesn't lead to a good place. So to know that we are how we respond, not what happens.
Yeah. There's a lot in there about, you know, victim, you know, to me, there's, well, it's an incredible place to be when you can realize, you know, the place that you've come from, find ways to make sense of it, find ways to actually find empowerment in it. Like you were talking about some of these great people that have gotten to where they are today. They could have easily stayed in a victim mindset, right? They could have easily stayed in a belief that, like, you know, oh, look at me, I had a really awful childhood, there's something wrong with me. You know, they could have stayed in that belief. That is common, right? The reason they've gotten to where they are, in my opinion, is they were able to do this work, right? It takes the red pill to kind of go into the depth of ourselves and figure out why all of this stuff, you know, maybe not say why it happened, but how to find empowering perspectives around it, how to find the actual gifts in it. Like even in some of the most extreme cases, I remember, from Date with Destiny with Tony too, he would help people that were suicidal. And even in some of their most extreme stories, like stuff that you just couldn't imagine would happen to someone, he could help them find the actual like gift in it, like the how you'd help them find an empowering meaning from it. And from that place, their entire life changes. They all of a sudden get out of this victim, story that they've been in, and rightfully so, right? They've been through some just awful things. If you watch the I'm Not Your Guru documentary, there was one story that's on that, and I've met the people that were at that event. Just like to be able to get out of that and find empowerment can just it's like a 180, right? All of a sudden your life is like this, and you think that all these things have been done to you, and there's something potentially wrong with you, and how could this possibly happen, and all these stories, and just but through it's all in here, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's not easy, but it can be done, as we've seen. And I know you've done your work, and when you're doing your work, so am I. You can find an empowering place with, I think, anything, and get to the because that, like you're saying, with Stoicism, that's our internal work. It doesn't matter what's out there. Even these extreme stories of people being in prison for many years and them being able to find, well, Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, and Nelson Mandela, all these extreme stories of people being in extreme environments and then being able to find meaning, for them to find some empowering place to be within themselves, I think is extraordinary, and that's available to anyone. We don't have to have that extreme a situation to be able to find that that ability within ourselves. But just that changes the whole game, right? That just changes our entire life every day we get up, if we realize that, wow, everything that's happened in my life, not to me, but in my life, has been there, and look at what I can learn from it. Look at how I can grow from it. Look at who it's helped me become. I just think that it's a 180. That's a huge shift.
Yeah. Yeah. And to take that reminds me of, I can't remember, do you remember the name of the president of the US that was like the president when they supposedly went to the moon for the first time? Do you remember who that
Who
was?
was the president at the time? I
Yeah.
should, but I don't. Yes.
I can't remember. I can't remember exactly who it was. But there's a story that goes that he was at NASA, like they were about to, like the spaceship was about to launch, and he's in one of the rooms and he sees one of the janitors there, and he's just wiping up, or he's just cleaning up, and he goes to the janitor, he's like, "Oh, hey, what do you do here?" And he says, "We're putting a man on the moon." And I mean, this is a guy who was just cleaning, but he didn't see his role as, I'm just cleaning. He saw the bigger thing, that we're putting, like he's an instrumental part in this whole process. Without him,
Right.
even the lowly job of cleaning is part of that bigger process. And it's like the more that we can put ourselves into situations that's our outlook. That the small part that we get to play is still a part. It's an instrumental part. That the job of whatever the worst job you think there is, whether it's cleaning toilets or taking out trash or caring for kids at a preschool or whatever it is. I mean, your job, the thing that you get to do is so instrumental to helping everybody get through this life. And when we think about our circumstances, yeah, if we're victims to this, like, oh, I have to do this. Well, you're playing a big part. It's a huge thing.
Well, that shift from I just quickly looked it up on my phone while you're talking, since our producer is on the show here. Right.
Oh, yeah.
You
Hey,
being
look that up.
our amazing producer, JFK. That makes sense. I think is what Google just told me quickly.
I thought he died before that all happened.
I don't know. That was a really quick.
But maybe he told that story. Who knows?
Yeah. What president put a man on the moon? Yeah, JFK.
Yeah. I thought he died in
you know,
63, but then they didn't go to the moon until 69. Either way, what do I know? I'm Canadian.
Yeah. The point I think you're trying to make is, and there's two things I hear in that. One is you might, yeah, there, you could tell yourself a story that, man, I'm just a janitor and this sucks, I'm cleaning the floors. But to be able to have that a perspective about, no, I'm doing an important job here. Like without me, I'm a part of this whole bigger thing. So I feel like, but in both, actually both ways I see that, whether you're JFK standing there or the janitor, gratitude is the word that comes to my mind in terms of
Mm.
like being able to really appreciate, if it's just to say you're in JFK shoes there, like being able to really, really appreciate like how much it takes for, him to be where he is and for this rocket ship to be, where it is. Like how many things needed to happen, right? In every part of it. And you can't even appreciate perhaps the totality of it, but just gratitude for this person right here is a key part of this overall mission. Like even just I always just go back to like one of the nuts on that spaceship, the engineering, the materials that had to, like someone had to mine the materials out of the ground. They had to find the materials. They had to mine the materials. They had to extract them. Someone had to engineer that bolt pattern, stress test it, create this. I mean, there's so much that would have gone into one single bolt that's on that ship. And then you just look at the whole thing and you go, holy cow. Like, that to me just creates humbleness and gratitude and appreciation. And I feel like if you can be in that place, it just allows you to not take things for granted in terms of like heat, right? It's like, I feel like it's the same thing. If you can truly be grateful for, the warmth that we have in our homes, and I think largely people watching this will have that, but not everyone does, unfortunately. And just, I think that's an important thing to tie it back to our kids is to help them realize that this heat doesn't just come from, in our house, forced air. It doesn't just come from a hole in the floor. Like to really help them be grateful for where it actually comes from. Like how many things had to happen for that heat to come through the floor, or food in the fridge, right? That's so easy. Like you said, you can just press a button and food comes to the door, or groceries come to the door. People can order it like that. I think it's also super important. Like my son's been really keen on fishing, and him and I have just put ourselves in the mindset now. Like, holy cow! Like, what if him and I had to fish to actually feed our family right now? Like
Yeah.
that mindset just blew me away the other day when we were out there, and I was like, because we're not catching anything. Like we're, right now I'm a bit of an embarrassment to my ancestors who were amazing fishermen here in Vancouver. And it's just, but it's mind blowing. It's boggling. It's very humbling for me to realize how hard it can be to actually get food for your family. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah. And
creates,
think about how like we're riding such a fine line right now. Like we think everything is so easy. Yet like if one thing were to happen, like, power goes out, if the power were to go out, like we're done
for an extended period of time.
for an extended period of time. Yeah. We're done.
Yeah.
Like how quickly we devolve into chaos because of that.
Well, just how reliant we are on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. There's nothing I can do about that at this point. And I'm not necessarily willing to go down the rabbit hole of learning every single survival skill that I need to be able to do that. There's other stuff I want to do that I think is more important. And I have enough trust in our systems to be able to handle most of that. But yeah, it's like once you take a moment to step back, I think it's important sometimes to, like with our kids, to have those conversations for ourselves whenever we get into like deep in the mire of stress and chaos and feeling anxious about our futures and any of those things, to really step back and go, wait a second, there's a lot happening here. There's a lot that I have to be thankful for. Thank God I don't have to do all of those things to make my life work. And yeah, they're coming
Yeah.
back to that place of gratitude. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful this light just works. That I don't have to figure out how to put it, like turn it back on, how to create an LED. I could never do that.
I mean, the amount of things that are working right now for you and I to be able to do this is like, it's like just mind-boggling, really. The amount of technology that's enabling you and I to connect right now and stream out to the entire world live in real time. Like that's
Yeah.
like just
It's mind boggling.
that's
Yeah.
mind
And
boggling.
how many times we don't ever think about that. Yeah. There's a comedian that had a bit, I can't remember which comedian, but he's talking about like, oh, it was Louis C.K. who's talking about the miracle of flight. It's like we get on these planes, these metal tubes in the air. He's like, how are we not just sitting there going, oh my God, holy shit. Like I'm flying.
Way
Like
up in
it's
the air.
so amazing. Yet it's like, my seat doesn't recline very much.
That's all you have for snacks on the plane. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, like it's so easy for us now. That it's so easy to just take so much for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. That is it. Yeah. It's very humbling. And just back to, that's, I think for me, why the thankfulness practice, I call it, I guess praying, I call it, well, some people call it praying. Just a practice of gratitude. I use thanks every morning. I think is really helping me just be in that empowering mindset of like, man, like just I'm thankful for the fact that right now I have a few minutes of peace and quiet to do this. And sometimes I'll do it even on the toilet because that's when I get the most peace and quiet. Is the door's locked, and I'm on the toilet, and I will pray while I pee, and I'll sit down, and that's what I'll do for 2 minutes. And I'll even be thankful for the fact that we have like flushing toilets and running water, and just to have these 2 minutes, and I have the ability to do this. Like I do think that single practice that takes 2 minutes every day creates a wonderful amount of chemistry in my body and gratitude and empowerment to realize just how incredible each day is that we get to live.
Yeah. Something that I was mentioning to the guys in my cold plunge group. We call ourselves the Cold Plunge Bunch. I wrote them a message the other day after I'd gotten ready for the morning, and I wrote them something to the effect of like, most people will never understand the pure bliss of a hot shower. Like I'll get into, and most days now, 5 out of 7 days, I'll get into a hot shower after having been in the cold plunge and like warming myself back up for the next couple hours. Getting into a hot shower is like heaven. It's the best feeling of all time.
Right.
But it needed that contrast to be able to have, like, I needed that contrast to be able to feel that. And like without the struggle, without the hardship, without the challenge, we don't often appreciate. Like it's just, we have this like just baseline. And so even at that baseline, to think about things that we can be grateful for, like, so having those practices where we're actively cultivating gratitude. Yeah, I think it's so critical. Something that Tony taught me that I thought was awesome, because there's still times, lots of times, where I feel like a victim of my life, or I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like just life's not good. And the idea of being grateful, the idea of having gratitude, it's like, like I'm not right now. I'm not feeling grateful right now. I'm not. And it's just hard I could say that I'm grateful for this, but I don't feel it. But Tony had this great distinction to kind of reframe it. He said, okay, if you're not grateful, what could you be grateful for? And just that little shift really was a big shift for me, actually. So when I'm not feeling that way, I think, okay, well, what I could be grateful for this. I could be grateful for that. And the more things that I think about that I could be grateful for, I actually start to actually feel it. Like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it just breaks that pattern of victimization, it breaks that pattern of stress and anxiety or whatever it is that I'm feeling, and just really begins to insert the idea of gratitude. And once that idea of gratitude is seated, then ultimately it always begins to bloom. Like it always begins to grow within me, even if it's just a little bit. But I've noticed that just that one shift. Okay, well, what could I be grateful for right now? I'm not feeling grateful. I'm not grateful for anything right now. I hate everything that's going on. Life sucks. Sure. My life sucks. I suck. Well, I could be grateful I could be grateful that I have a roof over my head. I could be grateful that there's food in the fridge. I could be grateful that I just poured myself a hot cup of coffee. I could be grateful that my kids are so amazing and they have great friends and they're at a good school. And then the more that I start to stack those, the more, oh yeah, actually I am grateful for that. It starts to shift my attitude.
Yeah, how to get out of, there's some great practices like that when you're sharing it. It's just, yeah, like it's like an atomic habit, right? Like don't try and lift the heaviest weight at the gym right away. It's like I'm not feeling that. But like, can you just put your shoes on and pretend like you're gonna go to the gym? Like, can you just take that little step of what could I be grateful for right now, and then just a little step, and then a little one, and then a little one, and then you end up, going to the gym every day, and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah. And I love hearing things like from people that I look up to many times. It's guys like David Goggins, who like we've been sharing his quotes recently. They don't know me, son.
Yeah.
And I mean, regarded as the person we know it or we know of, they say he's the hardest man on the planet. And this guy's got so much grit. And to hear his story when he talks about how there are mornings where he will just put his shoes on and just stare at his shoes. He knows he's gonna go for a run, but he'll stare at his shoes for an hour. Doesn't want to do it. And we sometimes think that the people that we see these highlight reels on Instagram and on Facebook and on TikTok and whatever. We see these people doing these superhuman things. We think, well, they're just superhuman and they don't have a bone of stress or doubt or anything like that. But that they actually go through the same thing. And there's something really, really comforting and also inspiring to know that David Goggins stares at his shoes for 30 minutes. That these people who do these super cool things also have doubt, also have limitations of their own minds that they're working through themselves. And to bring it right back to like as being a parent, I think that that's so critical too. Like to share those moments with our kids that like when we're going through something difficult is, it's a moment for us to be like, okay, this is a time that I can teach them and step up for myself and for them. Like, yeah, I find this really hard, but okay, I'm going to do it. Yeah. When I was a kid, I wasn't very good at that. I was really scared of that too. I messed this up too. And to share that openly with them allows them to feel like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Because if they're like really looking up to us, like just like I idolize my parents. My dad is still my hero. I think about Tom Brady, who like the GOAT of football, who was asked a few years ago, like, who's your hero? And he got choked up. This is a guy who's like 40 years old. He's choked up in front of a bunch of reporters on TV, and he's getting choked up. He's crying. It's like, my dad. Like, wow, like the greatest football player of all time is getting choked up, and his hero is still his dad. And just like me, my hero is my dad. And to know that he messed up too, and he had moments where he doubted himself. And when he's able to, he wasn't always able to share that with me. And I think about with the gift of just being able to share that with my kids, that they like look to me as some sort of thing that I'm not, like this superhero guy that takes care of everything. And that I still go through those things to see like, oh, that they're not alone, that when they have those feelings that they're not alone.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's super valuable to share the process, right? Like good or like, a kid could grow up thinking that if they look on social media, everyone's got things figured out. If they see their parents and we don't share what's going on, right? If we're not willing to be vulnerable, I mean, that's a whole other topic we could, share another day, right? Around how the power of vulnerability is being able to share with our kids. Like, yeah, this is hard for me, right? Like I don't have everything figured out. Like there's a fine line between, obviously your kids need to feel confident that the pilot of the ship, knows what they're doing to some degree, because they start to freak out if you share everything.
I don't know what I'm doing. Get out of here.
The kids do need to know that the captain of the ship knows somewhat directionally that where it's going, and that it's gonna, if it's an airplane, that it's gonna stay up in the air, right? You don't want it to freak out all the passengers. But there are some important times where I think it's super valuable for them to go, for you to be like, I don't know how to do this, right? This is something new for me. I've never fished before. Like to not try and put on this front all the time that you've got things figured out, right? I think that's because they know they're very intuitive at that age. They haven't got it all, taught out of them. They get a good sense of what's going on, and I think it's super important when you don't have it figured out to be able to let them know, like, yeah, I'm figuring this out. You're not gonna always know the answer. You're not always gonna have to have it figured out. Not everyone online does. Even David Goggins has his tough days. Same with Tony Robbins. I think that's super valuable for them, and also even the other side of that, right? Like, I don't think I got much of that as a kid, and I got to figure it out on my own, which was great. But like even on the upside, right? How to figure out something, how did you figure something that you've become really great at? Like my dad had a business that he ran and started himself with some other people. He got acquired. He then left and went back on his own again, and then got acquired again. And all through that journey, I never really got to learn how he did it, like the struggles or the wins. Like, how did he build that? How did the internal struggles, the wins, like, how did he sell it? Like, he just did it. And so he was a phenomenal example for me. And I think it's also helpful for our kids. And this is what I'm doing more with mine, is just let them in a little bit on that world. Like, so they can see, oh, yes, I'm struggling right now. I'm trying to figure this part out. That this is what it looks like to start a business. Like, I don't have it all figured out. It's not super easy. And look at this. It's working. This is working. Look at this, So I think, I don't know. I think it's super helpful, in my opinion, to just be the example, but in more than just the outcome, also by sharing the journey, sharing the process, and then also at the same time not freaking them out.
Right. That would be so funny. I have no idea what I'm doing. Get out.
Wait, weren't you the pilot of the airplane then? Yeah. There's a lot fine line there. I mean, there's a few other things I wanted to tie back to our previous conversations. One is we started out with daily habits. And the other one that you shared, which we didn't explicitly just talk about, was how important it's been in, I think, your life and mine to have a group of people that every day we connect with. So for you, it's the cold plunge bunch. For me, it's the six guys. Well, I'm one of them. So six of us in total that every single morning I connect with, I share a text with, right? Right now I'm doing an audio. So our practice is, we call it an I am practice, but it's the reason we call this being dads. Our group is being men. It's showing up. It's not about what we're doing, right? That's an action that's largely outside of us. It's not doing dads. It's not doing life. It's being dads, being men, and what that means to us, right? How it's in that state of being that all these great things can happen if we're getting into that place of being grateful, being awesome, as you have on your shirt, being the best that we possibly can be in this moment, which isn't always the same as it was yesterday. So that's a practice that I know you have, and that I forgot to mention that I do every morning. Is I just do a quick audio clip on WhatsApp and share it with 5 other guys, and we've been doing this for almost 9 years, and sharing how I'm choosing to show up today, how I want to be today. And just knowing that every day and every moment, it's hard sometimes, but we have a choice in terms of how we want to be.
Yeah, I find that practice is so great. And I remember so I have the same practice with, and I used to be in a group with some other guys too. I've recently left that group, but I still actually do the practice. I do it on Signal. I have my own little thing. So I kept up with the I am practice. And one of the beautiful things I think about that I am practice, and I remember having to teach it or talk about it with some people, some newcomers when they came to our group, is they would come to the I am, and it's like, well, I'm not feeling this. Like, I don't feel like I am this. And they felt inadequate sharing when all of the other guys were like, I'm genius. I am creativity, or whatever it is. And I remember just having to drill it down. Like, no, it's not how you're internally, what you may be feeling. because you are not your emotions, but this is the intention that I have for today. This is like the compelling future that I'm moving in and moving towards. Is if I'm feeling like today I am unstoppable. I might be saying that because I am feeling the exact opposite of that.
Right, right.
But the intention is that this is my intention for today. This is the target. This is where I'm headed. It may not be where I am right now, but I'm speaking like the more that we speak, we know, and I know as as a speaking coach, that we speak life into, like we speak reality into reality, but through our words, through our thoughts. And our thoughts create our focus, and our focus create our feelings, and our feelings create our actions. And all of that stems from just the words that we tell each other, the words that we tell ourselves. And so that practice, I think, is so great. I would recommend it for anybody to start. Just that audio practice, I think, is even better. I loved it even more than just writing it down.
Yeah.
Was speaking it. Because I could tell sometimes in my own voice, I could tell in the other guy's voice, like, okay, you don't quite believe it. You're saying it. I would say it. I don't quite believe it, what I'm saying. And so in a moment, in times when I was doing it with a group, or even now when I listen back to them, like, ooh, I don't quite believe that. What do I need to do right now to get into that state? Or someone else would say, oh, they're feeling, whatever it is that they're intending, but they're not quite feeling it. Okay, now's an opportunity for me to step up and support that person, to encourage that person, to ask if they need help, to just really raise the level. Because just like as in any relationship, like there's not going to be every day that I'm going to be 100% and my wife's going to be 100%. It's always going to fluctuate. And it's like that with any relationship. And sometimes we're the ones that are picking up, and one's the time we're the ones being picked up. So just having that, just setting that intention, and not even that this is the reality right now that I totally believe, or that I totally am certain about, but this is where I'm headed, and this is what I want. And the more that we have that, just the compelling future that we're moving towards, I think is such a game changer. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, forgot that's probably one of the most valuable daily practices you have. Yeah, I have a call at 7. I'd like to keep going, but I'd like to honor your and my time here, and then also the time of the commitment I have in 3 minutes. So
Yeah.
there's just one last thing too around language too, and I know we've talked about this before. Is just that shift from I have to I get to. If I think of that janitor, you know, sometimes we don't get to see the whole picture. We can't imagine even that we're cleaning the floors, and that somehow helps the rocket ship take off. But just being able to be in that place of gratitude can be a huge help, right? Like I get to do this. Like I'm alive. Like everything. If you're able to think a thought, everything from that point forward is a choice. Like I get to think a certain way. I mean, largely at least with your own internal state of being. I get to be like this. I get to think about this way. I get to mop these floors right now. Like I could do something else. Like there is a choice. Like I could go get a different job, but and then sometimes I know situations can be really tough. Like that's maybe the only job available right now, but still, I still get to do it. I still get to get up. I still get to do this thing. I might not see how the whole thing fits all together. I mean, there's so many times in my life where I don't realize that the thing I'm doing right now, how it could possibly play out, but I'll see it later on, sometimes days, weeks, months, even years. Well, I don't have time for this right now. There's a really cool story that took 25 years to play out. And I wouldn't have known when I was in it how that would actually happen. But
So tune in next week.
There we go.
I like that. Open loop.
Yeah, no, it's true though. It's a phenomenal, I think, story of how something took so long to play out.
All right. Well, we'll share that next week then.
Well, thanks, man. Awesome to see you.
You too, brother.
Appreciate our connection and time here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you're still at the end of our hour here, thanks, Mom, for listening to a couple of our recent ones and some of your feedback. And yeah, love you guys.